Grab your favorite alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverage, drink responsibly, do not drink and drive, and join us for the latest episode of Why Complain When You Can Whine. Everything in this podcast is purely for entertainment and psychoeducational purposes only. Enjoy! Welcome to Why Complain When You Can Whine, making sense of the senseless, which is getting harder and harder every day. Join us as we attempt to make sense of toxic nonsense. I am Dr. Jody Lorman, licensed clinical psychologist, and I usually say this at the end, but I'm going to say this at the beginning because I always see it at the beginning. If you like this video, if you like this podcast or any other podcast, please like, subscribe, share, hit that button to subscribe, and there's a little bell that is notifies you of any time that we drop a podcast or a short or anything like that. And yes, we started adding shorts to our channel as well. So you can listen to this now because we are also on YouTube podcasts and everywhere that podcasts are hosted. So that being said, I had to say that because I say it at the end and then I forget. So,
Okay.
So my glass today says, fuck this fucking day. And it actually should be, fuck this 2025. Fuck this fucking year so far. So aside from what's happening in the world, fuck this day, it's just been, ever since 2025, there's just been shit going on in my life every fucking day. Like first world problems, I get it, but it's still annoying shit, you know? So like today, I noticed a oil leak under my Ford Escape. And I'm like, seriously, you're going to do this when tariffs are happening in Mexico? Thank you. Couldn't do it last week, but luckily we're postponed a month. So I'm taking my car in next week. My wine today for this is called Freak Show. It's a Cabernet because it should actually say fucking shit show. Sorry.
Well, it is a bit of a freak show down there.
It is a freak show. So it says Lodi, California. This is a California wine, and it is the strongest man on earth.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Yeah. So
well played. That's good. I'm not drinking tonight, folks. But before I get to what I'm drinking, my name is Bree Burry or Brianne, if you would like to address me by my first name or my full name. And I'm a licensed therapist up in British Columbia, Canada. And tonight I'm actually just drinking peppermint tea. I'm pretty boring because I've had the stomach flu for the last few days and I'm just recovering. God bless children and how cesspool they are, right? They're just little germ pockets. Yeah, my whole house was like a quarantined hospital. I had a daughter that had the stomach flu, and then my other kids had pink eye, and it was really lovely.
oh no. Yeah.
Yeah, I avoided that one, thank God. But anyways, I'm drinking peppermint tea, but my mug says, Clary, the calm down and shut the Frank up. I'm an oil user. So Clary calm, right? Clary sage is calming, and then frankincense is like the king of all oils, and it's amazing for everything. But Clary the calm down and shut the Frank up. It's pretty good. So there we go.
We need to drop what is it called? You know when they do I'm totally drawing a blank. When they would do pesticides, crop dust. Crop dust. We need to crop dust this place with frankincense, with sage, with a lot of sage.
Yeah.
This place needs, the United States needs saging big time.
You need a cleansing.
We need saging big time.
The cleansing of all cleanses, right?
We need to get the bad spirits out.
For all the biblical Republicans down in the States who are so into the Bible, frankincense is the oil, the king of all oils. It's healing. It was the gift of Magi, if you know, and obviously you know all about this, right? The three wise men and the kings and brought to baby Jesus. And it's an amazing oil. You guys need ample amounts of Frank to heal what's going on down there. And I'm not by any stretch I don't come from any sort of organized religion, right? Like I have my spiritual beliefs, but I usually keep them pretty private.
I'm very spiritual. I'm more spiritual than religious.
Me too. I just, not everybody has your beliefs don't necessarily align with others. So that's why I remain respectful of the people that don't share my beliefs, so I don't preach them out loud publicly. Oh, what a thought. What a concept, hey?
What a not 2025.
All right.
Where that goes back to like 2018, No, not even. I'm sorry, 2016. Prior to
Back when there was
2016.
so much less cognitive dissonance in the world and everybody seemed to have half a fucking brain. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah,
What
that
are
one
we?
brain cell, the collective brain cell, is now being shared amongst more people.
I know, I
One
know,
collective brain cell does not have much more staying power.
I
And
know. On that note, Dr. Larman, what are we discussing this evening?
the fuckery continues every day. Mump, which is my name for the presidents that we have, Trump and Musk, because we have now two presidents, if people didn't know. I think Musk might be the main person because he's the money person, but don't tell Trump that.
Oh, but it's
So,
his autism as to why he makes
oh,
gestures that are so inappropriate because he's autistic and he just doesn't get it. Okay, sure. Right.
yeah, I'll talk about, let me, thank you. So, Mump, every day is something new. Every day is
Mhm.
something bad. We didn't even talk about, because it just happened, the lovely Roman salute of
Yeah.
who, honestly, anybody, and I'm going to say this right now, if you do not believe that that was a Heil Hitler, if you want to say it was anything else, then I challenge you to make a video of yourself doing it out in public and post it online.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And see what kind of what you get back in response to that. There is no way in today's day and age where he was reaching out to the people that he loves. Not one person on the planet that ever has ever gestured to a crowd of people their love for them in that way.
And for,
Yet your eyes deceive you. If you seriously do not see what's right in front of you, you are so distorted and you seriously want to turn a blind eye. You just don't want to admit what's really happening. That's
what gets me is there's a lot of no, not a lot of Jewish people. I have a couple Jewish friends. I'm Jewish. I have a couple. It wasn't. And then they show not just the Jewish. Now I think about it, it's just one Jewish person. Sorry, just one Jewish person who then posted a meme that's going around of Hillary, Kamala, Elizabeth Warren, and Obama with their hands out like this, their arms out like this, saying they're doing the same thing, pointing, taking something out of me going like this. You can take a screenshot of it and say that's what I was doing. You can take a screenshot of anybody with their hand up and say, oh, that's what they were doing. Don't take it out of fucking context. Seriously, there is no way that Kamala going like that, and I've seen people on social media that are very
Oh,
Trump.
this is how they justify. This
Yeah,
is narcissistic people, and they deflect and they twist the reality of what's really happening. Don't talk about gaslighting.
big time gaslighting.
This is gaslighting, guys. If you
He
are denying
doubles
the
down.
reality of what's really happening, that is the definition of gaslighting. You cannot compare what that fool did in front, and he didn't do it once, did
Mm-mm.
twice, and
Three
every
times. He did it three
single
times,
person.
they said. Three
Oh,
times.
I
We only
can't even.
caught
I
two of
just saw
them.
him turn his back. He did it the one time, and I would never, ever mimic that because I will never, ever, ever, ever be so disrespectful to history and
You don't
Jody
put your
past.
hand on your heart
Yeah, put your hand on your heart and be like this.
and then do that.
And
Now,
then,
I'm not
do
doing this
this.
all in
Do this.
one motion,
Do this.
people.
Do
I'm
this.
doing
Go like
this.
this. If
Yeah.
you're sending your love to people, what's wrong with this gesture? Like,
I'm
oh,
going like
like
this. I'm
to
sending my love
do.
like this. I'm flinging my lug out to you. There's so many other ways
Ways.
you
But
can,
the way he did it is exactly what he meant.
and
And that was by Hitler.
you don't go like this and then follow it with a
Very sharp, straight
very
armed,
sharp.
up on an angle in front of your body. Hi, we all know what that fucking means. And
Yeah.
to every skinhead and neo-Nazi out there knows what it means and isn't denying the reality of it and love it.
And then
So
he doubled down
I
by
know.
tweeting all sorts of Hitler puns.
Mhm. Exactly. So what does that show?
He knew exactly what he was doing. And I'm sorry, I don't, if anything, he might be Asperger's. which is part of the autism spectrum. Yes, but he's not full on. I think a lot of people that are on the spectrum now are actually Asperger's, very high functioning, whatever. So
I
if
know that.
anything, he's Asperger's.
Yeah,
However,
it's more of the social and communication deficits.
yeah,
Like they struggle with social and communication deficits more than anything, and they struggle with
but
empathy and they struggle with understanding. And you can see
social
where they,
cues.
right? Yeah, social cues, all of those things. But it doesn't matter. I know many autistic people. My daughter is on the spectrum.
My
Yours,
son is on the spectrum.
yes. So
And
here's the thing. They know right from wrong. He fucking knows right from wrong. There is
and if
no question that that's exactly what that meant. So to all of you out there living your world in denial,
and here's the thing.
I can't.
Autism, Asperger's, whatever you want to call it, they're not stupid.
No, they're
And
not.
anyone insinuating that he didn't know what he was doing, that's an insult to autistic
Well,
people,
here's the deal.
honestly.
And an 11-year-old kid years ago, I'll never forget it, did a TED Talk on quantum mechanics and quantum physics. And at the age of, I believe, 8 or 9, came
By
up with
Asperger's.
theory and a problem that scientists have been working on for decades. And he figured it out at 9 or 10 because and they said he would be nonverbal and he would never speak and he was low functioning on the autism spectrum. Kid is so bright. Most brilliant minds in the world are on the spectrum.
By
Again,
a lot of
yes,
times they're savants. Yeah.
right, 100%. Einstein also was neurodivergent. He had what do you call it? Dyslexia. Okay, so again, the most brilliant minds are the ones that can hyperfocus and become kind of obsessive about stuff, and the way that their brain processes information. So no, autism does not mean that they're ignorant or they're actually the polar opposite to that.
But Bree, you said that, and we said social cues. So he didn't know he was inept at social cues. No, that's not what I mean, and not what she means by social cues. It
Mhm.
means they don't get sarcasm necessarily.
I don't
They don't
understand
get those
sarcasm.
underlying jokes. They don't
Mhm.
get, if somebody says, "How are you?" I'm fine.
Mhm. They don't understand
They
to
don't
ask it back.
reciprocate. Like,
They don't
I,
reciprocate.
I,
That's a social deficit,
yeah, I
right?
don't care how you are. I'm not being rude. It's just not my life. So I don't care how you are.
Mhm.
Now, then they can learn. Like I read a book years ago and I cannot remember the name of it. And it bugs me because I used to write them all down, but it's from the electronic library. So I don't know what I checked out. But this man in his 40s found out he was Asperger's. Asperger's is still Asperger's if you were diagnosed before 2013, then
Mhm.
you can still keep the Asperger's. After
Yeah,
2013, it's part of the spectrum.
it's
So
ASD.
he found out that he was Asperger's, and he said that answered a lot of questions. He said,
Mhm.
because people used to come up to me, and one day I was working, and someone said, "Oh my God, so and so was in a car accident." And I was like, "Oh." And they're like, "Don't you care?" And he's like, "But that doesn't has nothing to do with me." So it's not that he didn't care, but socially he didn't know he was supposed to be like, "Oh my God, I'm so
This is where
sorry."
people get confused where they lack empathy or they think they can. They can. It's because they don't understand how to put themselves in the shoes of another person because it
Yeah.
doesn't relate to them. So they can come across self-centered and unempathetic, but it really does have more to do with the lack of social understanding and what they're supposed to do.
But
So they
they
learn
can
how to ask.
learn. He
They do.
learned. He said,
Yeah.
even if I don't care, I've learned to say, "How are you?"
Yeah,
And I've learned to
exactly.
make exchanges, even
Mhm.
if inside I'm like, I'm just doing this to be polite.
It
Now,
is social reciprocity.
the difference between Asperger's and narcissists,
Hmm.
because people think, well, okay, you just said lack empathy or
Yeah,
potential
well, they
because,
can
but
overlap, but there is a distinct difference.
there is a very distinct difference. And that is, and this is not technical. Asperger's do not mean to hurt you. They are not out to hurt you. They don't want to hurt you. They don't
Mhm.
want to be rude. They don't want to, like Sheldon on the Big Bang. He's not, you're sitting in my seat. It's you're sitting in my seat. That's my seat. That's my
They're
pattern.
very literal.
Yeah. So they're not trying to. And I actually said this to my ex. I said, I used to think you were Asperger's. Now I realize you are NPD. He may
Mhm.
have some Asperger's, but you are NPD. And he's like, what's the difference? I said, Asperger's, well, they don't want to hurt you. They're not trying to hurt you.
Yeah.
They don't realize they're not being connected, not asking you how you're feeling and stuff. And he goes, okay. And I said, narcissists, they want to hurt you. They
Hmm.
want to fuck you up. What
Hmm.
they're doing They
Mhm.
don't care about how you're doing.
Oh, they
Like
don't.
you literally don't matter unless you mean something to get, you're a means to an ends to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the difference. Asperger's, they're not mean people. They have no underlying conniving
No.
motive for
There's
anything.
no maliciousness or
No,
vindictiveness within them, where narcissism, depending on the
it's all
spectrum,
malicious and
it's all
vindictive.
malicious and vindictive. But I will say that I do know cases where I've seen autism and NPD together.
Oh,
It
that's
can,
what I said. My ex still might have some.
yeah. And so that's where it gets confusing. This is where it's not black or white, one or the other. There's so much overlap and comorbidity with all symptoms because we're on a spectrum of everything.
Right.
Anyways, we're digressing a little bit, but where are we going back? So yeah,
So,
the
so,
Elon,
so the lovely Roman salute.
right, the mump.
That was the start of a lot. Well, no, not even the start. Where is the start? Oh, the start was when the plane crashed and he blamed DEI.
I'm supposed to go to New Orleans in March, or I'm supposed to go meet a friend down there, and I'm not. I don't think I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I'm scared. Like it scares me. Like I don't trust what's going on with security stuff and what's coming around the corner. Everything seems so unpredictable at this point. And I never even thought about red states versus blue states before. Obviously, being more that I'm on the Democratic side of things and my beliefs and my values are strong with the blue, but as I'm a liberal myself, but I never used to look at, well, I wouldn't travel to a red state because of my values and my beliefs. I love culture, I love people, I love experiencing new things, but I'm actually terrified.
Mhm. And the thing is, security wise,
Mm.
I never ever in my wildest dreams thought this. Now that Musk had his, there were ages like one was still in high school. There were six guys I think he had go in and get all of the information from the Social Security network, meaning every American with a social security number, their data is now in these 16 to 24-year-old, I think it was, six of them that did it for Elon Musk, who is from South Africa. He's a naturalized citizen, which ironically Trump wants to get rid of, but I'm sure that won't affect him. Who is not elected, who cannot get security clearances, but has gotten all of our data in the United States. So I was texting Bree this afternoon and I started to text something and I stopped and I erased it because I said, maybe this is dramatic, but I don't trust anymore that what I say isn't being, yes, we're on this podcast, but isn't being scrutinized, isn't going to be watched, isn't, we used to have free speech. We used to have freedom of the ability. This was the one thing about the United States that was unique from third world countries and a lot of different countries at the time. And even when the United States was founded, the Constitution was written, we have freedom of speech to
That's
be
what it
able to critique the government, to be
is.
able to say shit about the government without fear of reprisal. I'm not talking about criminal threats.
Yeah, we do too. We have free speech as well.
But
Same
back
with
in 1776 or whenever the Constitution, whatever, don't get me on my history, people, but because I know it was written on one day and signed on another, but that was a big thing. The First Amendment, freedom of speech, that we were allowed because back in, I guess, England, they weren't allowed to say stuff about the crown. So they came here, and that was a huge thing. Freedom and the ability to criticize the government without
it
fear of
was considered
reprisal.
treason. You
Huh?
couldn't speak out against the crown or the monarchy because it was considered treason. Now, I'm part of a Commonwealth country, so we actually fall under the crown. Although our government, right? I mean, the crown doesn't really, it's like that's old, right?
More
But
symbolic.
it's symbolic, but the thing is that there's just mutual respect between the institution, which is the crown and the monarchy, versus the governments that fall within Commonwealth countries. So we don't have, the First Amendment, constitutional. We're not, you guys are independent in that sense, but we're part of a whole slew of countries that fall within the British Crown that all kind of speak the same language. And there's just sort of a common respect there. You don't have King Charles, who used to be Queen Elizabeth for ages, coming in and trying to dictate and set rules and all these things within
But you're
Canada.
also allowed to say, I don't like him.
Yep. Yeah, we are. Well, yeah, when it comes to our government, we are definitely have free speech and allowed to do that. And I mean, nobody has anything negative to really say publicly about the crown. It's just they've kind of keep to themselves and do their own thing. And it's more of a historical thing. It's a landmark, right?
We used to be, that was one of our hallmarks. We could sit there and say whatever the hell we want, as long as it's not a criminal threat. I'm be reasonable, people. I'm not talking about the outliers. But now he's going after anybody and everybody that has said and done anything he doesn't like. He's already sued ABC and George Stephanopoulos for saying that he raped someone 7 times. They said the word rape. And instead of ABC fighting it, it wasn't defamation. He didn't lose any money because of it. And it wasn't even false because the judge said what he did was tantamount to rape. So instead of fighting it, though, they rolled over and gave him 40 something, 42 million or something like that. And then he turned around and he sued a little newspaper in Iowa who said that Harris was winning in the polls.
He's such a sore loser. This guy is the epitome of every cluster B issue out there. He is a cluster B effing milkshake, this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And honestly, Dr. Lerman, it's scary. And I'm not a fearful person. Again, growing up in Canada and our values are a little bit different. There's an innate sort of epigenetic predisposed fear that Americans have because their lack of gun control and different things and so much violence and corruptness and all the rest of it that is there. What do you mean you don't carry a gun to protect yourself? And I'm like, oh, the thought of that just terrifies me. I wasn't born into that and I wasn't raised in that. I can
We
walk
weren't either. We
and
weren't either. This started in 2016,
I don't
really bad.
Well, I didn't have to lock my door. We don't have school shootings. It just doesn't exist here. It has nothing to do with population. It has everything to do with our gun control and that we have stricter
Mhm.
laws in place. Doesn't mean remove them. It means put stricter laws in place. But now you're at a point where, again, I don't have that inbred fear. But to think of flying, like to going to like a really thick red state to travel right now. And then even just getting on a plane going into the US is scary. Like, look what just happened with the plane crash. Like, I mean, and who
Yeah.
knows? Like, I mean, it's an accident, right? Like, crap
No,
happens.
according to Trump, it was DEI, and he won't backtrack on that. Like, DEI means diversity, inclusion, and excuse me, diversity, equity, and inclusion. But the right side has made it sound like we're just hiring a bunch of inept people. Instead of saying the words diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're just calling it DEI. So people don't even, and it's a psychological tactic so
Mm,
that they won't question what DEI is. DEI is bad. DEI is evil. DEI means that they're just going to hire anyone who wants the job. Like this one guy was saying, this comedian was talking about, I think it was on the Late Show. The guy that does not Jon Stewart, but someone that was taking over or whoever does for Jon Stewart was saying that Trump even mentioned dwarfism.
Or I was just gonna say it. I'm like, is she gonna say the dwarf? Yeah, he mentioned all of the disabilities and people that are
Epilepsy.
epilepsy and all these different physical and mental disabilities. And he actually brought in dwarfism as one of them. Like hiring a dwarf would be a problem.
Yeah, because we need the best and the brightest. So anybody, and he said this, that the people that caused the crash had psychological mental illnesses, which was really, he said they didn't have psychological qualities or something. I don't know. He made up some psychological word. They didn't have that. And he knows this because he has common sense that no one else has. Dude, you are the epitome of not having common sense. And
He's
that,
calling out dwarfism, but he's running the fucking country and he
yeah.
is more mentally inept than any human on the planet.
And someone with a mental illness, now I'm sorry, I have bipolar too.
Hmm.
I am a psychologist. I am
Hmm.
not a fucking DEI hire.
No,
Okay. So I understand that there have been suicides, usually there have been like sadly airplane crashes that were suicides. Pilot was not mentally stable, but that is not blamed on, oh, I'm so sick of, as a psychologist, everything is blamed on mental illness.
I know. I know.
Everything. Now, Did you know you know this, but did you know statistically that mental illness, they're not the cause of these kind of issues. They're usually the victim of, like with mass shootings.
Of course they are.
They're not the cause of, they are the victims of. And if somebody does shoot someone, it's usually self-inflicted.
Mhm.
It's usually a suicide,
Mhm.
or it's a murder suicide. They were depressed, they took their family with them, whatever. So it's
Well, here's
someone close to them, not
men-
a mass shooting or whatever.
exactly, but mental illness is a global issue. This is the biggest thing that kills me about the deflection and the defense. People get defensive about their guns and the US gun laws. And I know, again, maybe we're digressing a little bit, but it's really important to know that mental health is a global, a universal problem, and it's not going away because we're all part of the same species and we all are on spectrums of all of these things and we all have traits of everything. It just becomes problematic. So regardless, you've got India, a country of billions of people, not millions, billions, and they don't have school shootings. They don't have mass anything. And there's poverty, and you've got really wealthy and really, really poor, and there's no middle class necessarily, which creates more violence in countries, believe it or not, when you don't have a middle class. If you take out the middle class, that's the buffer. Then you've got extremely wealthy versus extremely poor. You've got the poor robbing the rich, and there's more violence. But they don't have the gun issues. So you can't say that it's a population issue and that you have, and that it's a mental health issue. They all have the same mental health problems we have. They all have. And they've got more population than Canada. So when you say, oh, you guys are so unpopulated, well, India doesn't have this problem. China doesn't have this problem. Japan doesn't have this problem. You are the only country
Nowhere has the
in the
problem that
world
we have.
has this problem. So it comes down to gun laws. But again, the deflection continues, just like deflecting about Mump, or I should say Musk, and what he did.
Well,
Again, people will not see what they don't want to see. They will find every stupid excuse and rational behavior. There's a quote. I'm actually reading a book right now. I'll just show it to you guys. Women who love psychopaths.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Why does that look like Michael Jackson on the front, though?
As it's a mask. And it's written by a clinical counselor, Sandra L.
Michael
Brown.
Jackson to me.
But they talk about that in here, actually. There's that the kind of that whole whatever I was just referring to. I totally lost my train of thought. Anyways.
The cognitive
Oh
dissonance.
yeah, the cognitive dissonance and that they will only believe what they want to believe. They
Mhm.
will distort reality. What reality is placed in you, you can't change reality. So we have to find our way to change reality. That's a distorted person or disordered person, whether it's personality disorder, psychopathy, whatever you want to call it.
Now, add to that, here, ooh, you just touched on something. When you have someone who can't do that, won't do that, now you add that to billions of people, millions, sorry, millions of people, because we have 350 million in this country, millions of people. And then you have a literal, and I mean this. No, I have never met him. I do not need to meet him to diagnose this. Someone left a comment saying, oh, you know him, you met him. No, you don't need to meet him to diagnose this. You have a full-on NPD who is constantly distorting reality, like constantly distorting reality. There's no such thing as reality, real reality, if that makes sense in his mind. So you have these people with these huge cognitive dissonance. You have someone who's helping, enabling, pushing that. My God. No wonder. I mean, this one collective brain cell is going to burst at some point. It has
Oh,
to.
it's insane. Actually, I watched a documentary on Trump ages ago, and it was all clinical psychologists and psychiatrists that were diagnosing Trump as not only a narcissist, but a full-on psychopath, sadistic, malignant narcissist, psychopathic traits, all of the things. Like I said, he's a cluster B milkshake when you think
Yeah.
about it, right? All of the dramatic, erratic traits, characteristics of distorted or disordered personality types. And they said, the best way to for us to actually give more of a certain an understanding of somebody's personality pathology is watching them behind the scenes, not diagnosing them in clinical settings, because anybody can go in
Thank you.
and you can check off a list and somebody could manipulate and easily distort or lie. But the fact that they see him out running as president, running as the apprentice, being in the public eye, they're able to see his behavior day in and day out, which gives them a better understanding and a more accurate
Oh,
diagnoses.
yeah. Most of our, because I'm a diagnostician. When I went to school, I'm a scientist practitioner. That was the program that I went in, research and diagnosing and practicing. And so I'm a diagnostician, and the vast majority is observing. When I worked in the prison, we watched the inmates all the time on the yard. They'd come and see us. But yet out on the yard, they're partying, they're doing whatever, they're hanging with the homies. But with us, it's like,
Mhm,
really? Because I
mhm.
just saw you out there and you saw me see you. So it's observation. That's why I can confidently diagnose him as an
Yeah,
NPD. Okay, let me backtrack. I'm so sorry. When Bree says cluster B milkshake, cluster B, for those of you who go back and watch our videos, our podcast, cluster B is NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. That is all of cluster B. So traits of all of them is a cluster B milkshake, which I like to call a cluster fuck. But
clusterfuck.
so with ASPD, when you have ASPD diagnosis plus a narcissistic personality diagnosis, that's where you get what would be called a sociopath.
Sociopath. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But sociopaths are usually charming, and he is absolutely not. So I'm going to call him a
You
psychopath.
can see, well, you can see where he would be charming to women. Like, no, I mean, back in the day when he money and he was like, probably like, oh, you're
Right.
beautiful and knows all the glib and the
Maybe a
like,
hundred pounds
yeah,
less, you know,
if you were desperate and wanted money and
and
were,
blind in one eye,
being a high paid escort because he's so gross, he's orange. I call him pumpkin face squash nuts.
just
But
people doing his makeup.
that's gross. But you can see, like he landed very attractive women, and he was like, he plays the part. So interestingly enough, I mean, sociopath, based on sociology and sociologists who determine that a sociopath is created from environment. So it's nurturing versus nature, whereas a psychopath is more nature versus nurture. They think with the wiring of the brain and the way you're born leads to more, but they both fall under ASPD, which is antisocial personality disorder, even though they think like there's many psychopaths out there that don't necessarily kill and
Right.
murder people. They're not all serial killers, guys. They're Donald Trump.
That's what when we've argued or debated about this, my colleagues and I for a while. And you're going to see because there is no such thing as a sociopath and psychopath in the DSM.
No,
So
there isn't.
it's very much, you're going to find different views on it. And my colleagues and I, after working in prison and all that, is sociopath is someone who is charming, is someone who you will relate to and want to be with, and then they kill you. A
Hmm.
psychopath is someone you're like, I think of psycho is someone you run from, is someone you, that guy's crazy, and they still kill you. Either
Hmm.
way, you're dead in the end,
Hmm.
whatever word you want to use, screwed, messed up, whatever. But psychopaths, if you think of psychotic, psychopath, and socio, they get along better with society. Now, you're
Yeah.
going to also find the opposite. So, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to find both schools of thought, and neither are right or wrong because there hasn't been a definitive,
And a definitive, they all fall under the same
yeah.
spectrum. They're the same thing. Basically, a sociopath and a psychopath aren't any different. And they are people that are antisocial personality. They don't
So,
follow
that's
social.
the main thing is the
That is
antisocial part.
antisocial part is that they don't fall into they don't follow social norms. They're above the law, they break the law, they constantly extort, exploit, and this is all common in traits within narcissism. You can see it in BPD, you can see it in like again histrionic type of attention seeking, constant, dramatic, over the top. But the biggest thing is they distort the world within them and the world on the outside. It's a distortion. It's not what we consider neurotypical. And again, I find that in the States, people that are following Trump are obviously following in the same, like personality wise, and the fact that they are denying what's right in front of them, reality, which is the sky's not purple, guys, it's blue. We know it's blue, but you're still saying it's purple.
Well, because
It's
Trump
frustrating.
says it's purple.
Yeah, right. Because Trump says it's purple, so it's purple. And oh no, Elon Musk didn't do that. You guys are getting it all wrong. Again, this is gas. Like it is so scary that he has that kind of power over people. And what did Hitler do? He had power. I met the most amazing Jewish lady a while ago. She said, my parents, I thought she was nuts. She's like, I thought my mom was nuts. She said it was going to happen again. It's going to happen again. They survived the Holocaust. They actually survived it. She says, this will happen again, mark my word. And her name is Ella. She just said, I thought my mom was crazy. And she's like, look what's happening.
You
She's
know, it's so, you had just said something. Now I'm losing my train of thought. How lovely. Getting old really sucks sometimes. It's a blessing, but I have totally lost my train of thought. And that's gotten worse since COVID, unfortunately. After COVID, brain fog was
it's a
very
real,
big.
yeah.
But you know, the thing is, just like the histrionic, if people are wondering, because they're not as familiar with histrionic, how Trump puts everything back to him. Everything come back to him. Oh, wow, they did a great job. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl, and he sent out a congratulatory treat. Maybe the wine's kicking in. I haven't eaten. A congratulatory tweet saying, hey, the great state of Kansas City, which they're in Missouri, the great team of Kansas City, and they won, and all of those MAGA voters who voted for me. And it's like, really? You turned a congratulatory text back
Into
to
being about
you.
himself. Again, the epitome of narcissism and histrionic
And
right there.
histrionic, because histrionic is look at me.
Attention, attention. People that wear gargacious and outgoing stuff, and they think that people are sexually attracted to them when they're not, or they're closer to people than they really are, and they get very bent out of shape when they're, yeah, it's scary how much of he has all the traits from every single one. It's absolutely frightening.
Oh,
And
man.
the level of
I know what I
absolute,
was going to say.
okay, go back to it because I don't.
Speaking of cognitive dissonance, since Trump has been elected, there have been literally a lot, a lot. I keep reading about him and I'm loving it. Of people who voted for him now saying, well, I didn't know he meant me. And I didn't know he meant that. There was one Capitol Police person who voted for him and then said, wait a minute, I thought he was pro-police. And now he just pardoned all the January 6th people. And he's deporting everybody, and his in-laws are undocumented. I didn't think he meant my in-laws. I thought he meant criminals. I'm sorry, if you are undocumented to Donald Trump, that is a criminal. You do not have documentation. You are here illegally, meaning criminal, illegal, criminal. So all of these people that are like, wait a minute, wait a minute. I'm included in this?
Now that it's affecting you directly when you didn't think it would be, because you're naive and you're absolutely brain dead.
So you're gonna deport my family member? You're gonna deport me? I voted for you.
Yeah. Oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
know.
I'm sorry, but the January 6th people killed police officers.
And they're getting a pardon. Again, rules don't apply to him, and he gets to make the rules no matter whether they're against the law or not. Apparently, he doesn't have to be a 34 convicted felon. Again, the hypocrisy of where our world is at in your country is mind effing blowing. And I'm telling you right now, it's scary with this whole tariff thing that's going on because it's creating tension. And Canada has been an ally to the States for as many
Friends, for
as
God's sake.
are. It's scary. And it makes me so fearful for all my American. I'm telling you right now, if I was an American citizen, I'd be fucking moving out of that country in a
Oh
heart.
man, yesterday I opened up my phone. Yesterday was Sunday. Sunday, nothing should be happening on a Sunday. And I like to read my Apple News because I'm sorry, but I cannot put my head in the sand. I can't. So I like to read my Apple News because I'm not going to be complacent because complacency is complicit as well. And so, yeah, yesterday I thought it's Sunday. By about 5 minutes after I opened my news feed, I was terrified, terrified, depressed, wanted to figure out a way that I could pick my house up and move it somewhere else. I'm glad I'm in California. Thank God. I'm glad I'm in a blue state. But honestly, these tariffs and shit like that, I'm not gonna lie. I don't want to be paranoid. I'm not a conspiracy theorist,
Yeah.
but everything that I have worked for, my son is 22, he'll be 23 in May. Everything I've worked for the past 23 years has been for him. Even when I was a kid, I was saving money in jars for my future child.
Wow.
Seriously, I was a teenager and a little kid and a teenager, and I had $500 to put in the bank for my kid. Every time I would fill up my piggy bank, it went in for my kid. So everything I do was for my future child, who is now my child, who is now 22. All of my money, and I want to cry when I say this, all of my money in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, whatever, is for him. He is on the spectrum. I don't know when I plan on 40 more years, but I don't know what's going to happen. And so the stock market going up and down, I'm terrified of losing my money. Terrified, like beyond. I don't have another 22 years to gain it all back. And I have a significant amount that I will lose. So yesterday I was freaking the fuck out, not gonna lie. Freaking the fuck out about that. Um, and what the fuck? This alcohol, considering I've had nothing to eat, this alcohol
That
is
will
getting to
do it. Yeah, well,
um
it's because you can't predict what's going to happen to all of this now.
no.
If Trump is going in and taking what he wants to take from whoever and making all the rules,
But these
a lot of
tariffs
that
are
is,
diving everybody's economy.
oh,
Everybody's
it's going to
economy.
screw us. This is why we're retaliating. And this is what scares me is that Canada and we're not retaliatory. It's not even a little bit. And the fact that the 25% tariffs that you put on all of the things that we rely on that we sell to the States, such as lumber, gas and oil, we have the most, we are one of the richest countries in the world for natural resources. And I don't give a shit that Trump thinks that you have lumber fields like the lumber fields. Really? Is that a thing? No.
Yes,
Forest?
planks of lumber grow straight up, and all we do is pick a 2x4, 3x6. We just go to the forest and get them.
Yeah, no, I can't. I just can't. It just hurts my brain.
Just like we turn on the water valve from Canada to bring water to Southern California. That is doesn't fucking work.
It doesn't fucking work. But here's the deal. We do
Not the way it goes.
like our lumber and gas and oil. And I mean, all the rigs up here, the oil rigs that employ a large part of Canadians, right? Is going to screw us because of the cost. If the 25% tariffs are put on, our economy it's already effed and it's going to be even more effed with this. And so therefore, we are now banning in the province of British Columbia, which is where I am from, based on an announcement made either today or yesterday, I can't remember, that we are no longer purchasing liquor from any of the red states. So say Jack Daniels, Tennessee whiskey, bourbon, and all of the alcohol that is distilled and made within the red states, we are not purchasing and carrying in our government stores. So we are not putting them in BC liquor stores and not carrying them because
Ottawa took them all off the shelves as well.
shelves as well. We're axing, and this is again trying, you know what? You want to try to push your weight around with this tariff BS, then you're going to have some stiff throwback,
Oh, he put a retaliatory clause in there.
right? Yes, he did.
This is what he said too. Trump told reporters Friday he plans to eventually impose additional tariffs on oil, steel, copper, computer chips, and pharmaceuticals. He acknowledged that the tariffs imposed Saturday could cause temporary short-term disruptions, but that the American people will understand. You see, the power of the tariff, Trump said, no one can compete with us because we have by far the biggest piggy bank. The American people don't fucking understand, dude. We voted for I did not. I did not. And I still think shady shit was done. I don't think the vast majority of people did either. However, that's okay. But the price of eggs was why a lot of people voted for you. Not for stuff to go higher, but because you promised they would go lower on day one. And he says, when something is that high, when it's high, it's hard to bring it back down. And he's the same person that says the tariffs and the prices will be temporary. But wait, if they're hard to bring back down before tariffs, how are you going to bring them back down after tariffs? See, this is what people, he does word salad. Word salad, people. And yes, I'm making weird because that's what word salad is. Let's just
Fine.
throw shit in the air.
In the air and confuse everybody, but it's also, again, severe manipulation.
Mm. Word salad is a manipulative tactic.
Manipulative tactic. It's
I'm going to
manipulation.
say so many things, you're not even going to know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I'm going to circle back to myself again at the end. That has nothing to do with what was, again, he doesn't make any sense. You listen to this man talk, and he starts to make a point, and then he diverts and starts talking about something totally different. That isn't to what the question, like the question asked, he doesn't ever answer. He
No.
just talks in circles and diverts constantly. Constant diversion. Obama said it, word salad.
Yeah.
Again, people who are actual intelligent political leaders that that know what they're doing. It's just it's so sad that our world is going backwards in humanity and human rights are being disregarded left, right, and center. Racism is on the rise. Bigotry is on the rise. People, okay, so I'm gonna tell you a story. I had a friend that went on a date. So she's from back east. And Allie's in her, I think she's in her 50s. Yeah, she's in her 50s. And she hasn't been with anybody in a year and a bit. She's got two adult daughters, and she decided to go on a date when she was out here in Vancouver. And and she goes out with this guy, and then I got called. My birthday was the next day, so I went over to see, and she's super hungover. And my friend Carolyn's like, you got to hear what happened to Allie last night. She went on this date with this guy, and everything was going really great until he started sort of denying the reality of the residential schools. So if you know, I don't know if you any of the American people know much about, the Indigenous people of Canada and the residential schools and the abuse that went on and hidden by the government, really disturbing stuff. Graves, different things. Not to say that they weren't mixed with a bunch of other children that were unmarked that died of tuberculosis and a lot of diseases in the early 20th century, but residential schools were full of abuse and Indigenous children being abused, mistreated, and killed.
And
The,
buried with nobody knowing. They've dug up
and
a lot
buried
of
with, and
graves.
that's what I'm saying, mass graves, dumped in mass graves, nobody knowing, and they're unmarked. So he first went down that road, and Allie's like, sure you don't know what you're talking about. And she's very liberal, very. She actually works for the political party back in Ontario. So in Toronto, and then somehow Elon Musk got brought up after what he just did, and he said exactly like all, and this guy's Canadian, all the Trumpers out there, and that said that's not what he meant, and that's not, and it's being taken out of context. And she literally just said, you know what, our values don't align, and I'm not sitting here another second with a fucking neo-Nazi. And she got up and left him and stiffed him with a $300 bill.
Good for her. I
Well done, sister,
drink to
because
that. Yeah.
couldn't even handle it. Now, 10 years prior, she went on a date with that guy with a guy that said denied that the Holocaust happened. I can't. I can't. I can't. I had one person in my life that did that when I was 21 years old and 9/11 happened and we were watching everything on the computer screens at work because I worked at a restaurant. I worked at Earl's, which is now in the States. And four people came in, older couples that came in, and they were laughing. And I felt odd walking up to the table saying, how are you? As you're watching people fall from the trade centers, because it was just the most insane thing any of us have ever witnessed in our lifetime. And and I just said it's so tragic with it's hard to like it feels surreal. And this guy pipes up and he goes, ah, it's just a fucking hoax, just like the Holocaust. And I just looked at him and I'm like, and I turned around and I walked away and I went back to my manager and I'm like, I am not serving that table. You have to find somebody else. No thanks. He just denied that the Holocaust happened. He said it was a hoax. I can't.
And now we have a whole bunch of that in the United States. I never ever thought the phrase never again wouldn't mean anything.
You know, there's multiple documentaries, there's multiple literature and books. I will say that my uncle is a huge historian. He's also a horticulturalist and an archaeologist. And his thing is massively World War II in history. He knows everything about World War II. everything from Mengele to the Holocaust survivors to every creep Nazi on the planet. He's read about them. He's read their history. He knows everything. I've written, or not written, sorry, read from Holocaust survivors. Victor Yalom, um, his dad, Yalom, is a psychologist or psychiatrist, the one that kind of came up with group therapy and the philosophy of group therapy. And it was the most effective for uh, Holocaust survivors, people that actually were veterans as well as prisoners of war. And so the only way that they ever felt that they were ever understood was by with people that went through the same thing as them. It was the only thing that they could relate to. Other people could actually relate to their injustice, their pain, and their suffering and their PTSD.
When I was in Hebrew school, I had a bat mitzvah at 9, so, or I mean at 13, sorry, 13. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We saw videos, films of
Oh, I know.
the mass graves and the dead bodies. I mean, they won't show those things now, they'll be censored, and kids are too young to
You
know
can find
that
them.
that stuff.
You can look it up on the internet. They've got
I
actual
can still picture that. My Hebrew school principal had the tattoo. He was in, I don't know if it's Auschwitz or not, because some of them were not death camps. Some of them were concentration camps that sent you to the death camps. But they were all bad, all bad. Don't think that I'm excusing
my
it.
ex-boyfriend's grandparents escaped Dachau.
Yeah.
Now they weren't Jewish; they were
Yeah, because
Ukrainian.
it wasn't only Jews,
No,
people,
it wasn't. It
gays,
wasn't. It
mentally ill,
well, no,
development.
the Nazis needed them because she was a seamstress and he was a shoemaker, a leather worker, and so they needed them in the. So they were at Dachau, and the horrors of that. His grandfather couldn't be around a crying baby because they used to operate and they used on children without anesthetic and babies. They put candy in the middle, and these children who were infants and or not infants but toddlers and too young to understand chased after the candy, and the Nazis would just shoot them dead in front of their mothers. His 5-year-old sister was ripped apart by German shepherds and eaten in front of him. 5 years old.
And yet people want to say that never happened.
But that didn't happen. It's a hoax, right? And his trauma, he had 11 children. Two died at birth, I believe, and they wound up with nine. And they worked on a farm in one of the prairies in Canada. I believe it's Alberta or Manitoba. And that's how they survived. They had very little money. They canned everything. They farmed the land. They did everything. They had lots of children. But his grandmother was raped repeatedly by the Nazis and his grandfather, and both of them experienced the worst trauma a human could ever experience. It is the worst genocide in all of human history.
I'm
And
going to
people,
tell you, let me look it up really quick because there is a book. It's a fiction book, but it has a chapter in it. Oh my gosh, if I can find it. And if I can't, I'll end up putting it in the description. I think it was Poland, I think was the name of the book. Poland by James Michener.
Mhm.
And they did a whole section, and it's a faction book, a book that's fictional but is fact in a lot of ways. And they had one long chapter about the Holocaust, and it was written in the point of view of a man who was not Jewish, but he was kept for work, for labor, and they would feed them bountifully and then starve them, and then feed them bountifully and then starve them. And that is so bad for the body because in the whole time they're doing the manual labor and then they're being given luxury comforts. And
It's
then they're
actually,
back to the starving and the manual labor.
it can cause cardiac arrest. It's really
Yeah.
hard on.
And that's what they would do to those that weren't Jewish or that they needed that were Jewish, but they didn't need them for long. So anybody read that book. It's called Poland by James Michener, faction book, just a chapter. That was
Yeah.
enough to give me nightmares, and I already saw videos of the stuff for real.
How about the Midwife of Auschwitz? That's an amazing book. And there was one where she was actually a OBGYN gynecologist and would perform abortions on women before they went to the concentration camps or secretly did it because she knew that if they gave birth, their babies would be murdered minutes after they were born. Then there was a woman who was another midwife who wrote her perspective, who delivered all the babies. And I watched a documentary on her in Auschwitz. And
Yeah.
she would pass them over unless they looked Aryan. It was the only way that they survived. But if they were born with dark eyes, dark hair, whatever, they were drowned in barrels of water minutes after they were born.
So on that note, because you mentioned Arian, we are at the end, but we are going to continue this because the fuckery is sadly not going to stop. It is literally, in my opinion, the end of the world as we know it. And I don't feel fine. Sorry, REM. I don't feel fine. You know the song, It's the End of the World as We Know It, and I feel fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it is. And we are going to talk more about this. There is a lot more. Unfortunately, I wish we didn't have to, but when we are talking about narcissists, we are talking about toxic stuff. That's what this is, making sense of senseless or attempting to.
Hard stuff, guys. The things that I mentioned in this were pretty disturbing based on a personal experience I had with a person I was with for quite a few years and what his family went through.
Yeah,
It's it's not a hoax. For all of you
it's not.
that ever believe something like that, come on.
And if you think that it can't happen again, which I always did,
Yeah,
it can't.
history repeats itself. It always does. And it is
If you
happening
don't learn, if
if you
you
do.
don't learn, history doesn't repeat if you learn from your mistakes and you continue on. When you don't
What,
learn from your mistakes,
and what is the definition of a personality disorder and why they're so incurable is because they're not capable of change.
no.
There's no growth mindset, there's no learning. They continue to make the same mistakes over and over and don't think about the consequences, don't care about the consequences. And this is what's happening. We are literally the most ignorant, stupid species on the planet. Just keeps happening over and over and over
And
again.
it is terrifying.
It is,
I'm
it's
not being dramatic.
No, this isn't us being dramatic as you might think that we are. It's all happening. It doesn't mean, but our world is in for a big, like scary shift.
Upheaval. Yeah.
This tariff war that is now happening, he's creating tension within leaders around the world and other countries. And this is the beginning.
And
This
if
is what
I'm not mistaken, over the weekend, it was kind of brushed over, but there were already Russian planes, warplanes seen over Alaska area. Come
I
on.
know. I know. It makes me scared. We have children in this world, and
And
oh
it
my,
is the end of the world as we know it. He's already put in to try to change the amendment so that he can be president still, continue a third term.
this guy is all about power and dictation. And if you can't see that and you think that that's a good thing, then you're sorely mistaken. And it's affecting the rest of the world. It's not just your country. You think that you
Right.
voted this decision you guys made, the ones that decided to vote for Trump and still support him, is now globally affecting everybody else. But of course you don't care because you're just as narcissistic and pathological as he is until it affects you.
Why for some, this is just lovely. I think Musk is already finding me out. My my computer just started doing wacko stuff. Sorry, people.
My phone doing weird stuff too.
My microphone changed, so if my sound is different, sorry. My microphone changed. My mouse ain't working. My screen shrunk. It's like
Yeah.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not paranoid, but I'm like, this is not normal.
But this is what leads to thinking and being scared and fearful and paranoid is because you can't trust. There's no trust. The trust is broken. And what happens is that doubt seeps in all the time, maybe even over things that you think to be a little bit far-fetched or a little bit disproportionate, but that's where our brains go to protect ourselves. We have to make sure that we're protecting and figuring out the next move so we can be prepared. And this is what can create paranoia in people when there is such a lack of trust in an institution, a country, a government. Again, I'm surprised a revolution hasn't happened.
And we are supposed to be, we're supposed to be, I am sorry, guys. Everything is suddenly going literally haywire. Not stuff that I'm touching. It
Well,
has nothing to do.
that's
It just did it on its own.
our Anton.
This is so weird.
It is.
I don't know what it seems like on your end, but this is just weird. I can't get my computer to change back to my microphone. I have my mouse is no longer working, and this is just strange.
Woo, woo, woo.
Yeah, really. Until we get a cease and desist, which actually means that they're watching, which is kind of a little bit flattering. I mean, if they're actually
I
watching
don't
the
want those men
podcast.
anywhere near.
No, me neither. But if they're actually watching this podcast, really? You took the time to watch the podcast? That's
I don't think
pretty
so.
cool.
Actually important. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what's going on with my microphone. So everything changed. Luckily, we are at the end.
We
So
are.
this is the end of the world as we know it. Things are going to be changing. I wanted to bring up there was this whole article about how what Trump plans is going to change the entire country forever for good, which not forever, it's till another person hopefully is able to come in and fix it. But since everything is all screwed up, good timing. We will be continuing this.
Mhm.
This is only part one.
Yeah, I'm sure there's
Sadly,
more, but in 2 weeks we'll have way more material to work with yet again.
sadly. Because
Sadly.
I wanted to talk about Darvo, and we can add that in because he is a narcissist and he is great with Darvo. He's got that down pat.
It sure does.
So
Yep.
if you want to know what Darvo is,
Stay tuned for next time.
and we will see you guys soon.
Care everyone. Thank you.
Like, subscribe, share.